Hello, everyone. Welcome to this lecture on Lev Vygotsky, one of the most influential figures in the field of educational psychology and language development. Vygotsky's work has significantly shaped how we understand learning as a social and interactive process. Unlike other theorists who focused primarily on individual cognition, Vygotsky emphasized the role of culture, language, and social interaction in shaping a learner's development. Today, we'll explore his key ideas and their implications for teaching and learning. Before we go to that, let's get to know the man behind the so-called zone of proximal development. Lev Vygotsky is or was a Soviet psychologist and is known for his sociocultural theory of learning. He believed that social interaction plays a crucial role in cognitive development. His famous concept, the zone of proximal development, describes the gap between what a learner can do independently and what they can achieve with guidance. This idea led to the teaching strategy known as scaffolding, where support is gradually removed as learners gain confidence. So, now that we have gotten to know the man behind this concept of ZPD, I'd like to start our lecture on the zone of proximal development by setting the tone of our lecture with this quotation by Lev Vygotsky. And it goes this way: "What a child can do today with assistance, she will be able to do by herself tomorrow." This will become clearer to you as we go down further into the case of Lev Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. Now, this one is commonly known as a ZPD. As an English teacher, you need to understand this concept since this will deepen your grasp of how students acquire language and shape how you, as future TESOL educators, design lessons that truly support your learners. So what is the zone of proximal development? What is this all about? This one refers to the gap between what learners can do independently and what they can achieve with guidance. And this highlights the difference between actual development and potential development. Vygotsky argued that the most effective learning happens in this zone, and of course, with proper support. Now, I think this one can better be viewed and understood further by looking at its graphical representation. Take a look at this. So, as you can see here, there are three zones. The zone of actual development, which represents what learners can do without help. The zone of proximal development, or ZPD. This is the sweet spot, by the way. That's the gap between what they can do alone and what they can achieve with guidance. The third one, well, this is the one that you really have to avoid as much as possible. This is the one that you need your student or learner to get out of. This is beyond that zone line, or, what I can't do, what the student can't do. So this is the zone where material is too complex, even with assistance. So to clarify these three zones, I'd like to give this scenario for you to think really well. So think of a student who can write simple sentences, but struggles with paragraphs. So again, think of a student who can write simple sentences, but struggles with paragraphs. That struggle zone is their ZPD. However, the struggle will not last that long, of course, with the help of the teacher. So that means with teacher modeling, sentence starters, and peer feedback, the student gradually masters paragraph writing. So without support, the student might remain stuck Well, too much challenge might lead to discouragement. So that means you have to just focus on that sweet spot, the zone of proximal development. So it's already a given that your student can learn to do things independently on certain aspects, or can apply certain grammar rules of the English language. So this is the zone where you don't want to start with, because your learner or learners can do things already independently by themselves. Where you need to start with is at the zone of proximal development, or ZPD, the gap between what learners can do alone and what they can achieve with your guidance, of course. And this is what you want to avoid. The zone beyond that reach, or the zone beyond reach, when students cannot handle tasks that are too difficult even with help. So this is the zone where you want to let your learners be out of. So in this case, you have a student who can form simple sentences, such as, I like apples. And of course, a student can form this independently. So that's the ZAD. But you want your learner to go beyond that. So in this case, with your guidance, by providing perhaps sentence frames or vocabulary support, you can lead your student to form a more complex sentence. So instead of just writing a sentence like, I like apples, you can lead your learner in the zone of proximal development to write a sentence like, I like apples because they are sweet. To make sure that you're able to provide the right assistance to your learner, you need to apply or utilize the so-called scaffolding in the ZPD. Now, scaffolding refers to the temporary support that you provide to help your learners achieve tasks within their ZPD. So that means to bridge the gap within the ZPD, you use scaffolding, and it's just a temporary support that fades as the learners or your learners gain independence. And there are several types of scaffolding, by the way. We have, first, modeling. So this is a type of scaffolding wherein you demonstrate the task yourself, for the student, of course. So it could be showing how to use the word in a sentence, especially if you have a word that you would like to introduce to your learners or students, and you want to show to them how to use that word in a sentence. Another type is through prompting. Hints to guide understanding. So you can do this one by asking questions like, can you describe the picture using this word? Now that's another way of how to teach a new word or teach vocabulary to your learners. A third one is questioning, like leading questions to encourage thinking. Perhaps you can ask your student this question: why do you think this word fits here? That's another way on how to teach vocabulary, by the way, to your learner. Last but not least, feedbacking, of course. Well, this one refers to corrective and motivational responses. So an example of an effective feedback would be, great try, but can we make it more precise? Now, that kind of feedback is not going to be intimidating or terrifying, but more of motivating on the part of your student. So in this case then, scaffolding prevents learners from feeling overwhelmed while ensuring them their progress steadily, because you're there to help them initially. Now, How do we apply ZPD in TESOL as TESOL teachers? Well, there are actually strategies wherein we can apply the zone of proximal development in teaching English as a second language to our learners. We have differentiated instruction. In this case, you can tailor lessons based on learners' current abilities. Collaborative learning is another one. In this case, you can pair advanced learners with peers for peer tutoring. And this can help you a lot, save you time and save you further effort or exert more effort because you have an advanced learner who is there ready to help another peer who needs help or assistance on certain areas, or perhaps on a particular topic or grammar structure. Guided practice is another strategy where you can apply the ZPD in TESOL. Here, you use teacher-student dialogues to develop language skills. Last but not least, we have the gradual release of responsibility, wherein you move from teacher-led to more independent tasks performance for your students. So in TESOL, if you apply these 4 strategies, you can actually employ or utilize the ZPD. Through these strategies, you can start at a sweet spot wherein you know for the fact that your learners already have abilities to do this. But how can you move your learners to move beyond that or go beyond what they can currently perform and perform more complex communication tasks or contexts? Now, I'd like to give you the scenario of an application of the ZPD in TESOL. For example, you want to teach essay writing to your students. So as the teacher, you first model the structure and you guide your students through paragraph writing and then eventually allow them to write independently. But of course, you need to provide feedback from time to time because you want to see to it that if your students commit certain errors along the way, you would still not necessarily push them, but more of encouraging them to be better at what they're doing, especially when it comes to writing a particular essay. Now, there's one thing that I'd like to raise here, which is really crucial, by the way, when it comes to teaching your learners in their ZPD, in their zone of proximal development. And that is social interaction. There are 3 pointers that I'd like to raise in the case of social interaction. First, Vygotsky emphasized social interaction as the core of learning. Another one is conversations with peers, teachers, and more knowledgeable individuals can facilitate understanding. Last but not least, language itself is both a tool for communication and a cognitive skill developed through interaction. So let's make sense out of these 3 pointers about social interaction as a necessary element for the ZPD of your learner. And in that zone, you're teaching them English and you teach something new to them. In this case, Vygotsky believed language itself is both a tool for communication and a cognitive skill developed through social interaction. So group work, pair discussions, and collaborative projects are not just mere classroom management techniques. They're considered to be pathways to deeper learning. So when learners negotiate meaning together, when they learn together, they solidify their understanding because they get to learn from each other. They get to monitor also their learning by listening to what others have to say about a particular English lesson or English language lesson that you tackle in your class. Now, one more thing about the importance of social interaction. Let's put this in a scenario. When you employ group discussions in ESL classes, you don't only build speaking skills, but you also reinforce comprehension through collaborative meaning making. So in conclusion, Vygotsky's ZPD reminds us that learning is not an isolated process. It thrives through supportive social interaction. As TESOL educators, we should recognize each of our students' ZPD because that allows us to design effective student-centered lessons. And by providing appropriate scaffolding and encouraging collaboration, we empower learners to advance their language skills confidently. So Vygotsky's ZPD highlights the importance of tailored support in language learning. So as future TESOL educators, your role is to identify then your learner's ZPD, and you provide appropriate scaffolding and gradually, of course, empower your learners toward independent mastery. So I hope this elaboration, this explanation, this exploration of Vygotsky's ZPD adds more to your framework of reference, especially when it comes to teaching English as a second language, and also as you will be designing lessons and activities for your learners. Let me leave you with another quote or quotation by Lev Vygotsky. Learning awakens a variety of internal development processes that are able to operate only when the child interacts with people in his environment. I hope this one will be, if not will be, should be one of your mantras or your main mantra when it comes to development of English language teaching materials in the future. So, my dear teachers, thank you so much for your time. I hope this lecture has opened your mind to possibilities of how to improve your English language teaching, pedagogy, and most especially your attitude when it comes to teaching English as a second language to your learners. Now, the following references are used or were used to support the discussion on Vygotsky's zones or ZPD. Thank you so much. Take good care of yourselves and God bless. Bye-bye.